Tonight's topic, we're going to have 7 guests on the show, and we're going to talk about several things. I started the show out with the Trump resistance, how the QAnon people will not accept the election results, how they think Trump is still going to drain the swamp and purge whatever corrupt Democrats there are, how their out of touch reality is causing more political polarization. And we have a guest caller from Minneapolis who is second generation African, whose aunt's restaurant burned down in the George Floyd riots, and the realistic goals of each American now that we're in this late stage of government. What's going to be in the future for America in 2021?
This is Jane. Tonight's episode, we're going to talk about, is it going to be possible to diffuse both sides and avert a tragedy in Washington this coming week? For one thing, there's wire fences being built to fortify the White House. There's also several, I think there's about 2,500 National Guard troops that's going to be at the inauguration, and that's not really a welcoming sign. Even, let's just say if Joe Biden was enormously popular and he had a mandate, there would be no need for that. So it is a rather tenuous time in our nation. And my biggest worry and strain is not only pulling back people like John back into rational thinking, nothing personal, you'll get your chance to talk. But I'm just going to read, I kind of wrote the narrative tonight tongue-in-cheek, and we have Suzette and John on the line. Thank you for being a timely caller. The headliner tonight is why the Trumplicans won't give up, why people are obsessed with government. And we also have a 612 Minneapolis caller on the line. I still have QAnon friends who have radically changed over the last 4 years. Their credo is intertwined with the ideology that there is highbrow corruption in D.C. led by spiritually bankrupt members of the Democratic Party that do not wish well on their constituents. They have the unshakable belief that Trump will be throwing a successful military coup this week on January 20th. Now, some people really believe this. This is their reality. Even the My Pillow guy has been co-opted into a radical belief system that only Trump can save our country from ourselves. And he has made treasonous suggestions to the president to replace the top military brass with someone who can accommodate a proper and prompt military junta. Now, how do we differ any more than South America, I ask you? Can't we just sit back and watch Jane Austen movies and trust the world will respin to a normal axis? No frickin' way. So this is how I view it. I thought about something tonight, and I'm excited to see who our guest caller is, right straight from Minneapolis. This is what I thought about tonight. You cannot separate the politician from the policymaker. In 1953, Dwight D. Eisenhower was a stable man with a strong military background, and the Dulles brothers talked him into overthrowing the Iranian government in It was a foreign invasion of Mohammed Mossadegh, and they overthrew him, and he was a popular politician that tried to socialize British petroleum. And the Dulles brothers were also military men, and they talked Eisenhower into this. And here he was, a trusted, stable leader, and he got thrown into one of the worst situations possible. It ended up backfiring because now Mohammed Mossadegh is an international figure of someone who was slighted by foreign overthrow, the same way Kissinger did down in Chile in 73. So we're talking about the cult personality of Trump and how he's actually just, what was his agenda? Like he was told early on in the administration, do not go after Hillary Clinton. There's not enough evidence to convict her. You're not going to whitewash the people that your so-called enemies who you just practically invented after you were elected, and who put him on this crusade, because throughout his whole life he was about making money and being in entertainment, and he didn't really have that type of moral spin. Well, with that, I'm going to pull in all the co-hosts because we have quite a few tonight. We already have 5. Good evening, Suzette. You're the first one that I invited in.
Good evening.
How you doing tonight?
I'm doing okay. I like your tongue-in-cheek there with the Junta and the Jane Austen. It wouldn't it be nice?
I just have to lighten it up a bit. Things have been a little too serious, you know? I've also been watching The Crown, and the British monarchy is starting to appeal to me more and more, the stability of their rulership. Who do we have on the line from the 612?
Yes, good evening. My name is David.
Hi, David. How do you feel about the current state of affairs, and how is it affecting you? And can you relate to this pivotal talking point?
Yeah, I think it's well, I guess I look at it like this. I'm an immigrant to this country, so I kind of have like an outsider's perspective. So I kind of see both sides, if you will. I'm not on either side. So
we'd like to hear your point of view.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, thank you. I just want to point out. So the analogy I try to use is what I see going on in the country seems to be like things are kind of out of whack in the sense of media-wise. You guys seem to have one side that seems to be overrepresented, and it makes the other side feel as if they're like oppressed or somehow their side is not being taken as serious. And you see it reflected in the last 2 elections. So take 2016 and take 2020. In 2016, Democrats were saying that Trump was illegitimate, the election was fraudulent due to the Russian intervention, and they claimed that Trump was working with the Russians. And if you notice, like after that, for 2 years, the mainstream media, for the most part, took that narrative very seriously, and they reported on that all the time. And it led to a 2-year, $48 million investigation. Exactly. So then you saw a 2-year, $48 million investigation by Bob Mueller through the Department of Justice. And so you have that happen. Now you fast forward to 2020, and the other side, they feel like there's issues with the election, and they're claiming they have their own set of grievances. And it seems like the mainstream media just kind of dismissed it immediately. And there wasn't any real in-depth investigation. And from what I can tell, it looks like they were basically asking them to gather evidence and present it in court and make your case within like a 1-month window. And to me, what that show looks like I can understand why people who are on the right would feel some type of way, where it's like it seems like the left's grievances get taken more seriously, but the right's grievances kind of get dismissed. And then you throw in the fact that the left has the majority of the media in this country. And so when you put that in,
that's true. And the only place where the conservatives dominate the talking points is on radio. NPR is the only isolated liberal. I wouldn't even say liberal; they're pretty neutral. But people like Sean Hannity, Mark Levin, Larry Elder and others, they dominate the FM and AM channels. So the only place the conservatives really have advantages is on radio. And I have a friend on the line named John who would probably agree with you 100%. And we also have Don here tonight. So we have four co-hosts plus you. And so John or Suzette, why don't you take his points and go with it, since you're the two that can probably relate to what he's saying.
Well,
everybody's on the line now, so go ahead.
Yes, greetings, Jane, and thank you for your wonderful network of propaganda from the deep state. We appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. And I can vouch for my pillow guy since he's from Minnesota.
Yes, now, from what you've known of him previous, does he have a good reputation for being solid or being truthful about his product?
I think he's very sincere about his product, and that's how he became successful, because he so intensely believes in what he's selling. But on the other hand, he has kind of a checkered past. He was a repentant felon, but he had planned to run for governor earlier this year, but he never launched a campaign. However, just take it at base word, like, I really only know him. I don't really know him. I know some things about him, but not much beyond what he tries to sell.
Well, it's really important how you frame statements and how you try to project ideas. Example, you stated he has a checkered past. Now, he actually was a drug addict who had terrible addiction problems. And then he had a conversion to Christianity. And since that time period, his life has changed. Now he's a model citizen.
Definitely, and I'll give him kudos because I've worked through an addiction myself. So in that sense, I give him full kudos and props. However, but I think the mainstream media finds it rather. I'm not talking from my point of view, but he is a pillow salesman, and they're wondering what he's doing in the White House with papers on who Trump should replace with military. Who he should appoint, which was Kash Patel, I think, or Kush Patel. And then it's my understanding the White House lawyers didn't take him seriously, and he was escorted out of the White House.
Well, that's going to your point. You're taking things from like Rolling Stone magazine, Vox, other mainstream liberal publications that hate Donald Trump, who actually have, so if you believe what they said, he should have been impeached and removed in the first 2 months of his administration. He should have, Kavanaugh should have failed. North Korea should have destroyed.
Well, why don't you instead of picking a bone with me, why don't you comment on what our guest caller is saying? Well, that's what I asked you. I asked you to comment on what is.
Right. You took the time to outline this whole thing of what's happened with all these QAnon or conservative Republicans who have become Trump, basically brainwashed Kool-Aid, cult-following people. Yet what you overlook is that right now the President of the United States is deleted, not just banned, but deleted off of Twitter. So is Michael Flynn, so is Sidney Powell, so is any conservative voice. In fact, every person that I've followed or looked up on YouTube, in fact, if I even put in men are evil, within 10 seconds, I get blocked off of YouTube, Facebook for 24 hours. Imagine that. Not
okay,
even.
But you have to understand that not every publication is a liberal publication. Like the Manchester Guardian, which is in London, England, is the one who was the top leading story maker on the My Pillow guy.
Well, Jane, the point is that the whole media, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, has become the mouthpiece of China. They've deleted and destroyed.
Well, I disagree with that. I don't think the Washington Post or the New York Times, these are professional journalists, and it has nothing to do with China.
Professional just means
but they're super liberal, so that's obvious.
Professional means you get paid money. A prostitute gets paid, and she's a professional. The fact is, Madonna's account hasn't been deleted, nor has Cardi Graham, nor has Jim Carrey. And I can go down 500 people that are anti-Trump.
So am I in charge of Twitter? Because the last time I checked, I'm not.
Well, actually,
And
you're
whatever
charging
topic you choose to talk about, it's your show. So you're just asking people.
I mean, I do think that, Don, I do think that your research is productive and beneficial in your life, but your conclusions are not matching with what's really going to take place, and that's concerning for me.
Well,
I think the way that our caller David presented the information was completely rational, but I don't think that Trump is going to maintain public office on January 20th. That's concerning to me. So if you want to pick the phone with me, you can call me at 12:05. But I got 5 people here that have to blend into the conversation.
First of all, Ms. Hoffman, if you want me to hang up right now and never talk to you again, first of all, let's agree to something. Let me talk for 2 minutes without being interrupted. Every point you've stopped me, I can't even say one statement. You're so full of yourself. So you need to back it up.
No, you're full of yourself. Because I asked you to comment on David.
Goodbye.
Hello, this is Don. This is Don. You guys cut it out. Now, John, you guys had a question that Jane presented. Jane, you didn't let him speak. So you both have... I
did let him speak, but he's attacking me on what he thinks, who has the right to be on social media, and I'm just trying to entertain our guests.
But the thing is that social media is fluid. Right now, it's playing itself out. I'm against social media completely, so that's just my opinion. But the bottom line is that you didn't let him speak. He's got to...
I did too, but I don't want to be attacked.
That's all right. You're not attacked. He's going to answer your question. Go ahead, John.
Well, actually, here's the thing. She just spent the first 3 or 4 minutes attacking everyone that we're Kool-Aid, cult-influenced idiots that don't think, we're not rational.
Really? That's not the language? Okay, I'm going to mute you, John, so I can redo the introduction, because I'm making sacrifices today. It's my show. He already hung up.
That's fine, because the thing is...
I don't stand because he, you know what? It is crazy to think that Joe Biden is not taking the left turn on January 20th. That's craziness.
Yeah, that is crazy. But the thing is that...
He thinks that there's going to be a military coup and that Donald Trump is going to... He told me on the phone this morning that Donald Trump is going to be our president the next 4 years. This is how far people are going to go.
But that's all right. He is entitled to his opinion, Jane. You can't take
it. And I did let him finish, but he asked who's that. Did he start out answering the question, or did he start out attacking me?
And he started out attacking you about what you had just opened up with. That wasn't necessarily your opinion of what you opened up with, but the topic that you had and what some background on the topic of where you wanted the conversation maybe to go. And then you asked him to comment on David's call and what he said, and also about the topic. And then he started going off on a tangent, and attacking you, saying, Jane, you can't blah, 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 and blah, 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 blah. It's like, well, it's her show. It's her topic. She just asked you to comment, that's all. I mean, I don't mean to attack him either, but you asked him to comment.
Well, it's almost like a subversive undertaking. And anyways, David, let's just keep going with what we were talking about. So, based on the fact that a lot of Americans use Twitter, Instagram, and social media, what do you think? What direction's going to happen in the next 30 days?
Well, it seems like they've already decided that they're going to basically censor anyone that's conservative or puts out any narrative that they don't like. And as we see now, the Democrats are proposing, I believe, a bill called, it's like a domestic terrorist bill, where they're going to, it's essentially their way of getting rid of the First Amendment, from what I can tell, and silencing their political opposition, which is concerning. And it kind of makes you wonder what's going to happen under Joe Biden. But I'm still amazed that that guy genuinely thinks that Trump's going to still be president. Like, what would lead him to believe that?
Because he thinks that Trump has the legal authority to tap onto the military because he's still legally the president, and that the military will support whatever decision he tries to enforce.
Wow. And so he thinks the country's going to go along with that?
Right,
He
and
doesn't.
it's impossible because I'll take the Mike Pence side. I didn't necessarily want Trump to be impeached a second time. I just want him to leave office without any more chaos. But I don't want to go to the extreme of the other side. And like anybody who hurt a police officer on January 6th in that what they call the insurrection, I agree with them being prosecuted. But I don't believe fleshing out every single person who was there. Like some people have gone to the extremes on the left side.
Flesh out every single person there. They were there illegally and under the auspices of a sedition. And that's, the thing is that Trump doesn't care. He doesn't care about anything but money. You guys have to understand that. And if you don't by now, it's sad commentary. The man is about money. As long as he can.
Well, I mean, he does have a point.
As long as he can.
Cheated.
Well, as long as because it's not about that. It's about him getting funds from every person who believes in him to get ready for his legal fees. He's got to make as much money as he can. And right now his properties are hemorrhaging. And so the money that's coming in are from the little people who are still behind him and backing him up. And that's what he needs. The money.
Who's got this? He has a lot
It's
of
not
money in
just
assets,
about
but
the money, Don. We have to
It's all
redirect the fabric of our nation.
100% about money.
We don't have any principles to stand on right now. Like there's hardly any loyalty at all.
right. And to say that he knows exactly what Donald Trump is about is a little bit far stretched. None of us know what anybody is about, unless only that person knows what they're about.
I taught Donald Trump everything he knows.
Right. Anyway, that's ignorant. Just to say, throw that out there. So you think you know what he thinks and what he's about. Come on now.
I have a real good idea what he thinks. And,
Well, that's not what he thinks, though, even though you have a real good idea. Only Donald Trump knows what he thinks, just like only you know what you think. I'm sorry, but that's the way it is. That's fact.
Why would you willingly be un-American and promote sedition and treason? Why would you do that?
He did not promote sedition or treason. And besides, if the
That's
people
the
there
perspective.
wanted to take the Capitol, they wouldn't have done it with flags, okay? You see people wandering around in there taking pictures and stuff. They cleared it up within an hour out of the Capitol. So come on. For all what the right says that they have in ammunitions and guns, and they're all about the Bible and guns and everything, they could have taken the Capitol with their ammunition, with their guns, but they went in there with flags. And come on.
You didn't look in their eyes.
Look in their eyes.
This could have just as easily been the left doing it had Trump won. I mean, clearly, the last 2 years have shown that the left has no problem taking to the streets, burning things, and going nuts.
Way.
I mean, come on, man.
We believe in the scales of justice. That's our problem. That's our weakness.
Wait. What do you mean by we? You're referring to the left?
When I say, I'm a Democrat.
Don, you better define who you are.
I don't need to know. I'm me. I'm my.
First of all, David, Don and his wife, they used to be the top coaches of the NAACP. he thinks that white people subjugate black people up to this day, and that black people are more gifted than white people.
And I'm heading.
Okay, well, this
And I'm
then you could perfectly answer this thing. So if you're saying that the left somehow doesn't engage in political violence, what happened last spring and summer with Black Lives Matter?
And under Obama.
I'm from Minneapolis. And my aunt's restaurant got burned to the ground, and a
Hey,
lot of.
by the way,
Obama
David, I grew up in the Twin Cities. I live in Duluth now.
Oh, organizations like Antifa were welcome because they presented solidarity, and Antifa was what we call consumer reparation was the looting. That's all. There was no killing. Nobody died. A couple of police
nobody died. What about David Dorn, the retired officer that was killed?
What about the kid
I was
in
trying to steal from the store.
I was just going to say that there were a couple of casualties, but they were nearly as close as what is being professed right now at the inauguration.
What are you talking about? It was worse. It was nationwide.
What are you talking about? No, but it was. I'm saying it was peaceful. This was evil.
What?
That's
peaceful.
Well, okay.
So you define lighting businesses on fire and looting en masse and committing billions of dollars worth of damage. That's a peaceful protest?
That's better than a Rittenauer who shoots up, two people and now is, seeing the pictures giving...
Wait, Kyle, you're not referring to the 17-year-old in Wisconsin who was getting attacked by a mob? You left that part out, right?
Are you talking about the Kenosha situation?
Right.
Yeah, you're talking about the Kenosha situation.
And he's walking around with his guns hanging out, and he doesn't know what he's doing.
Oh, so why was he there with the guns? Did you forget that part when him and his other guy were protecting the gas station? That the owner requested them to help protect?
Is that worth shooting somebody? I mean, even if you're being pushed around or whatever the case may be, it's not necessarily life.
I love the way you phrased it as if you're getting pushed around. What he didn't tell you was it was about 8 people hunting him down, took him to the ground, tried to take his gun from him,
and he's still
and they were going to kill him. Okay? They were. You could tell they were trying to kill that kid, and that kid shot that guy in self-defense.
And he's still giving.
I can't believe you're out here trying to make that young kid
who
shot that guy out of fear as some type of monster when he.
Don, don't become defensive tonight, Don. Don.
He shot a third person. He was shooting at everybody.
Yeah, he was getting attacked. What the heck? If you had a gun on you, you got a group of people about to attack you, what are you going to do?
Man, he shouldn't have been there with a gun in the first place. He's 17.
Oh,
he's a minor.
So people shouldn't even attempt. So people shouldn't even be attempting to protect their property. They should just lay down and let people burn and loot their business. That's what they should do, right? Just lay down to the mob.
That's what insurance is for.
Okay, I have a question.
You know how many businesses in Minneapolis, their insurance still hasn't covered the cost of the damages? And what are you talking about, man? Are you out here trying to justify arson and looting like it's okay?
Okay, David, I want to know. Wait, Don. Since George Floyd died, David, what has been the most troubling thing for you on either side? Whether it be Derek Chauvin or how things were handled in Kenosha or the aftermath marches of the George Floyd thing. Like, what is the most disturbing thing to you the last 6 months in America?
Well, the way George Floyd was killed was obviously the most disturbing, and I think we all agree that Derek Chauvin should get, in my opinion, he should get the death sentence, but I guess in Minnesota they don't do that, so he should get lifetime in jail. But as far as...
Yeah, he's being tried separately from the other 3 cops. They just decided that.
Yeah, I don't agree with that, but we'll see how the case plays out. I mean, there's no way, if Derek Chauvin come out and get something, that'd be a terrible injustice, but what we saw after that was kind of insane. We went from peaceful protests that quickly turned into mass rioting and looting around the country And it immediately became evident these people, for the most part, didn't really care about George Floyd or police brutality or racism. They just saw a convenient opportunity to go and get a bunch of free stuff and commit some chaos. And for the guy,
well, some people were like that, but I think part of it had to do with we were under duress from the pandemic. A lot of people were on the brink of poverty. There's no justification for what happened, but there has been mass mayhem in the United States for over 9 months now, and certain events have perpetuated it further. By the way, I'm going to pull weight in, you guys, and I'm going to have Don and Suzette run the show so I can call John back. So I'll be right back with y'all. You and Suzette are running the show. Now, don't attack our guests. Or you're going to be the next one that goes down the censor tube.
All right. Go ahead.
Don doesn't even have a Facebook or Twitter.
Hey guys.
Not even close.
Hi, Wade.
Probably
Don, you don't even have a Facebook or Twitter, so the only place I can censor you is here.
Hi, Wade.
Hey,
Okay, so you guys keep talking. I'm going to call John back.
John. Wade, Wade. Jane already ran John off.
She did not.
Yeah,
He got his feelers hurt.
She did too.
Yeah,
Hey, what's up,
they
Wade?
have
Go
their
ahead.
clashes. Oh yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, I like a lot of John's point of view. Sometimes when he comes after Jane, though, it's like, yeah, I wouldn't do that. Okay, so
No, no.
yeah,
It's a brother
sometimes
sister thing.
yeah, and they're great friends. So it's yeah, like brother and sister, right? Yeah, good. You guys were talking about the George Floyd and the riots and stuff, and I think I heard a good point at the end. It's like, yeah, I wonder, I mean, does it have much to do with the causes, or are there just these people that are taking advantage of the situation and just, hey, let's go burn stuff, and you have leaders that are excusing it. I think a lot of that might be going on. I think there's just people that just, I don't know if it has much to do with support for George Floyd or if they just wanted to burn down things and hurt people.
Probably a little of both, I would say.
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. There are a lot of Tifa came in there, and they're no joke. That's why Portland was that's their epicenter, and so they went ahead and then they were at home doing what they were doing. So this was not, this was a hijacked situation where and this is the movement, not the organization. There's a difference between Black Lives Matter movement and Black Lives Matter organization. And the Black Lives Matter movement wanted to take up the banner of George Floyd, and Antifa and took it up. And after a few weeks, that the whole country was in the streets, and we have to ask ourselves why. A lot of this stuff is the result of what's been going on, and a lot of the stuff is that people want power and they want to start getting control. So the question to everybody, I implore everybody to go to the source and ask yourselves why. And it's all because of disparities somewhere. Everyone is feeling that like the system is broken, and my thing is to fix it. And so I do that every day. I have Martin Luther King caravan that I'll be taking care of Monday. We have it annually. It's the longest running one in the world, pretty much. And it's our 23rd. But we'll be driving on his highway in his memory, because Martin Luther King changed the world in peace and love. Yeah. And that's what it's all about. Mm-hmm. It's not about guns and drugs and human trafficking, which is where one segment of our population gets inordinate amount of money. And then if they're connecting the military, industrial, pharmaceutical complex with their endeavors, it's an oligarchy. It's the world is under their control, not under any politician. So I'm a lobbyist, so I'm down there every couple of years, making sure that laws are supposed to be for everyone. I work with both sides on both parties, and I'm good at it. And so, the thing is that I see that violence is not the answer, and that's why I commended before David stopped. I commended the more peaceful riots where only property was destroyed, as opposed to the taking of human lives, especially when it's more than one, by a youngster who should not have had a gun. And this is a specific, but she shouldn't have had a gun. He was a minor, he was out of state. For what reasons? I don't know. He wasn't.
Hey, John, my friend Daniel Sundayhouse is on the line from LA. Daniel, we have 6 callers, one from Minneapolis, one from Arizona, one from Riverside County, one from Reno, and me. How are you doing tonight, Dan?
How's it going, Jane? Great to hear from you again. Thanks for having me on again. Doing pretty good. Had a pretty good day today. What's up? How's it going?
All right.
So we have a guest caller named David on the line who was born somewhere else, and he feels that the mainstream media kind of is slanted in the sense that, like the left side, that like CNN and MSNBC, that constantly dissing Trump. However, I was trying to claim that Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the Washington Post, I don't look at those as liberal newspapers. I look at them as scholarly, educated journals that they're just trying to make sense of Donald Trump. So, Don, actually, you were involved in a good monologue, but if anybody wants to jump in, everybody take up to 90 seconds to 2 minutes, but let's all share the podium. So, basically keep going, Don, and Daniel, you can jump in a minute.
Daniel, you go ahead and espouse your interest. Go ahead.
All right, thank you. All right, so I think that the media really only has one purpose, and it's to sell news. At the end of the day, their business, so they're going to present things in a way where it's going to get people interested to listen to. It's a story, basically, right? So that's not to say that whatever is happening is not true, but it's definitely skewed in a way where people are either gonna feel or make them feel a certain way, right? And we're not what you see with social media, I think, because they are private businesses, and at the end of the day, they can do whatever they want with their businesses. I know some folks saying, well, that's violating the right to speech or whatever. You can argue that, but at the end of the day, it's their business, like I said. But right now, what's happening, I think that progressive, corporate Democrats are really, in charge of a lot of things, and let's not pretend like, that businessmen and politicians are not in bed with each other. You know what I mean? So I feel like they I'm sorry, that's my daughter in the back. I feel like they, at the end of the day, they take a side, and right now I feel like the left definitely has a lot of power, so they are going to pander to that side, and the right, really doesn't have any power because they don't have any corporate backing. So you're going to hear a lot more stuff from the left. That doesn't mean that it's all true, but really, when it comes to the media, that's the way I see it. So it's really hard to trust everything they're saying.
So I have a question for you. I feel social media is more powerful than print journalism, and I overheard a freshman congressman the other day say, like, they have the foreign minister of Iran on Twitter, but yet they don't have Donald Trump. And then I follow an actor named Michael Rappaport, who's now a comedian, and every day he's like saying, fuck Trump, 4 more days of Trump. I can't wait to get rid of his ass. Like, I'm on a BuzzFeed because he got impeached twice. Like, They don't censor people like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. There's some double standards for sure.
Suzette, feel free to jump into. So anyone can, like, I guess I find social media more like a vacuum, because even Donald Trump himself was looking for approval on some level. Definitely apart from the mainstream media. So it is more of a popularity contest, and what you say carries more weight than I suppose.
Social media is basically the destroyer of free speech, where mainstream media is pumping out, one side of a story. And so when you censor people that are trying to tell the other side of the story to have a broader picture, because there's always two sides to a story, it's censored and they're banned or they're suspended or something else. And the two combined are very dangerous to free speech, to having an opinion. If you put it something different than what's being reported out there, then you get censored or banned. And that's not good.
Yeah, like, I think in
tried
the
that
case
thing.
of Donald Trump, they thought that they were good. Now this is just a pat answer, but they think he was just gonna incite more violence because of his extremist point of views. Now, I was kind of in the Mark Zuckerberg camp of restraining them for only 2 weeks, but Twitter, the owner of Twitter, decided to permanently ban him. So that is pretty radical.
I mean, I feel like I think it's radical to censor him at all. Go ahead.
But he is going to have to make money to pay back all the back taxes he owes. So maybe they shouldn't box him out of every arena.
He's already get banned a lot of stuff. But
I feel like he's going to get reelected in 2024. That's what they're really worried about, because they know
I doubt it. He's going to be in his late 70s. How many people agree with what
That
you just
doesn't
said?
mean he wouldn't try. That doesn't mean he wouldn't try. He would try. He'd have to get through his own party. I don't know if he'd have enough support for that. But the thing is that he would have the audacity to try in 2024.
There's no other Republican candidate that could even come close to his popularity. There's no other politician in America right now that could go and fill a 20,000 plus arena than Trump. No, none of them could do that. That's a lot of.
Don't you guys think we're a little burnt out of Donald Trump? Like, can he just go away for 3 or 4 years?
Yeah, right now you might, but in 2024, people are going to want him back, because I've watched. You're going to see the Democrats are going to overplay their hands. They're going to engage in a lot of censorship that's going to rub a lot of people the wrong way. They're going to go after the Second Amendment. We all know that. And they're going to put policies in that are going to sound good, but when practically speaking, it's not going to work out. And everyone's going to be pissed because their taxes are going to be through the roof, and the economy is going to be terrible. And we know what's going to happen. Trump's going to be on the sideline critiquing everything, and then he's going to show back up in 2024 and say, listen, before COVID hit, I had this great economy, and these Democrats are lunatics that want to get rid of your First Amendment. I'm still the better option. And you'll be surprised how many people will join him. I think he's going to win a landslide in 24, easily.
I think they should make a new amendment that anyone over 70 can't run for president.
Well, no.
What are you going to do about Biden?
I agree with you. I agree with historically what you said would be happening. But this is a new day. I can see where the Democrats and part of Biden's, agenda is going to be some kind of reconciliation, true reconciliation with parts of the Republican Party, if you will. I can see where.
I think there's some sane elements of the Republican Party. 3 or 4 people were interviewed on NPR this week who voted for the impeachment.
Right. Well, I think that for the most part,
Yeah, for
you had the 10 senators, so you've got a real good possibility that there is going to be some kind of group that comes of the present Republican Party that is going to pop a splinter and try to see.
That's not going to happen. That's political suicide on the right. Any Republican that's out against Trump right now.
Don, you're the one who said it an hour ago that the country is. There's no president that's going to unify the nation. Not a single one.
No, not a single. The nation can't be unified. But the thing is that there will be a more exerted attempt by the Biden administration to be conciliatory to I don't want to call.
I can't believe you're saying that, dude.
Republican Party.
Do you know what the Truth and Reconciliation Project is about? That's not about reconciliation. That was about them punishing everyone they felt like that was enabling Trump. Meaning by that, attacking anyone in the media that supported him, going after politicians and corporate groups that support him. That's not reconciliation. That's them seeking revenge.
When you ameliorate an ally who is a criminal, actual criminal. He's been sued so many times, and when you are friends with that person and support them, you are an accomplice. And whatever they're doing,
he's referring to Trump here.
You can be.
This guy's on this line agreeing with the Democrats' Truth and Reconciliation Project, which they've stated they want to use to attack every Trump supporter in the media, any politicians, any corporate groups that back them. The Democrats want to take them out in some way, shape, or form. And he's getting on you saying that's a good thing to do. While talking about they want to bring the country back together. Listen, bro, you Democrats always overplay your hands. You know what you guys are going to do. You're going to overdo it like you always do. Get all over your sleeve, and it's going to blow up in your face. This is the issue of the Democratic Party for the last 30 years.
I agree with you, historically. I agree with you. Historically, that's what your scenario would play out. Absolutely. But this is a different day. This is a different time. We've got a few more intelligent politicos who are around.
Don, can you get out of the nursery room?
I abhor the journalism that's going on right now. I just trained. That's my major with journalism, and so the principles that the media are taking, and I've worked on TV and the newspaper, and the principles are totally askew from what we learned, from what journalism is supposed to be. Journalism is supposed to be completely objective, completely, just facts. And now with the social media, it has become so prevalent that everybody with a second grade education thinks that they are smart, and they can just barely read. And it's such a sad fact that these people are coming out and they are becoming the loudest. The person who gets the loudest gets fed, and that's what's happening here. There is no morality or very little morality in what they're doing. It's for money only, and that's their God. And for those people that say that God is on their side, that their God's country, they're idiots. It's not their country. It's stolen. All the trees, and it's coming out. They're giving even the Republican Supreme Court is giving the Indians, indigenous, back some of their land. This is,
can you give someone else a chance to talk like later to that?
No, I'm done.
All right. Well, I would say talk about the thing about reconciliation. They say, it's time for us to come together. A lot of times people mean it's time to just step in line and obey. The thing is that you are not going to get people to cooperate with the Democrats on. One, this is some of the stuff I agree with, and I've heard other people feel the same. Free speech,
there's no compromising. Like you have got to be able to disagree with people in power. You've got to be able to say, no, that's the wrong way to do it. I don't like what they're doing. And yeah, there's always a risk that you say, I don't like what that person's doing. Someone else might be like, yeah, I'm going to go kill that person, right? But, you have to be able to say, I don't approve of that. That's what a free society needs. The other thing is the red taping, those restrictions, centralizing things. A lot of people do not approve of having the federal government standardize things like education and stuff because people want different things to eat at night. People want different things in their community. They have different ideas about how education should be done. And to have one group say, okay, the authority needs to just decide this for everybody, a lot of people are never going to go along with that. I think those are some key points.
Suzette, what do you think of that? What you just said? Don, you're unmuted, but the kid noise is getting too much. Go ahead, Suzette.
Oh, I was going to say I agree a lot with the person that just spoke. I think government is just too much. Okay, Wade. I agree partially with what Wade said there. As far as people won't, and they don't want because they shouldn't. As far as the federal government, be all up in our business so much that they want to control everything, regulate things, and restrict things, and it's all done in the safety. It's for our own good. As if we're a bunch of morons and idiots out here that don't know any better. If that was the case, then our Constitution and our Bill of Rights that are there to protect those things that they are restricting, and that's on both sides of the aisle, then why do we even have those documents if they're just going to just stomp all over it? I mean, we shouldn't even really have anything to do with the federal government because the federal government and the president, he just is there to enforce the laws and deal mostly with foreign policy. And our legislature is supposed to make laws that work for everybody and weigh out things rather than what their constituents or what the lobbyists want, and where it puts the thumb on the American people, the average American person that's just trying to make a living, raise their family, and contribute to society in a positive way. And so, yeah, the federal government is just too much up our ass, and we need to reduce that position. Pardon my language.
Bravo!
Mm-hmm.
That's a great point.
Well, I can say that that you have to remember that even the Constitution was fluid, and this is supposed to be a living. Even though the actual 10 articles were supposed to be absolute, from what I remember about the Bill of Rights. But it's a fluid, living Constitution. Always made for change, and that's why lobbyists are there. That's why lawyers are there. That's why we have legislators. They change it all the time, and it's usually at the whim of what is popular at the time. So this is something that we're dealing with that's not going to remain the same. So what your idea may not be correct.
I beg to differ on that. I think they go around the Constitution rather than amend the Constitution because it requires a process for them to amend it, and so they go around it. And they've also given their power, the legislature, to other agencies in order to form policies that would have been law, except they couldn't get votes for it. So, no, the Constitution is not a living thing, and it doesn't have a whole lot of amendments in recent times because the people in Washington go around it.
Right.
So what did you think of the pressure they had on, what did you think of the pressure they put on Mike Pence to invoke the 25th Amendment?
I thought that was wrong, to put that pressure on him. They're not any better than Donald Trump putting pressure on Mike Pence to, as far as make any decisions on his behalf to reinstate him as couple. So on both sides, they shouldn't have been pressuring him at all.
I think it was up to him.
How much money do you want to bet that Kamala Harris is going to try to use the 25th Amendment on Biden within the next year or two? I guarantee they'll do it.
Sure. I've been wanting to make a point about talking about the Constitution and stuff. I would clarify something about that. I don't worship the Constitution. I don't think it's biblical or anything. It's not that I like freedom because the Constitution gives it to us. It's the other way around. I value what's in the Constitution.
Does not give us freedom.
Freedom is
It's
something I want. It's not that I have this dogma that the Constitution gives us these rights. And there's even, I like the Bill of Rights. There's stuff later that's not so good. Some of the, income tax, mainly income tax. Everything else is pretty good. But, it's not the dogma of we have to follow the Constitution. No, I like freedom. I like being able to make decisions. I like being able to be unusual. I don't want to have to just be a certain way because that's what everybody expects.
Well, that's what the Constitution protects. It doesn't give you the rights. You have your rights from God. You have God-given rights.
Yeah.
And the Constitution and the Bill of Rights is there only to protect those rights against anybody stepping on those rights. But it doesn't give you your rights. It never has been.
Yeah, it documents what was already there.
That comes from the tradition of Rousseau and John Locke. Civil rights. See, laws are when you have your inherent human rights, and then you give up some of those rights in exchange for civil rights, and that means police protection and some kind of societal structure. But the general, broad, federally based Constitution says that's right. It doesn't go into a lot of details. It just gives kind of arcs of boundaries between each institutional setting. And it's a lot of it is left up for interpretation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even when Nixon hit those 18 and a half minutes of tapes, the only thing technically he did wrong is that he broke the law by criminally breaking into the Watergate building to spy on the Democrats, even though he was almost 16 or 20 points ahead in the election. But as far as incriminating himself, it was hard for them to pinpoint a reason or why he was should be removed from office.
Yeah.
Anyways, so does anybody else want to elaborate on other things going on and how much security they have in the Capitol right now with wire fences and National Guards?
David, you've been pretty
I
quiet.
just wanted to add real quick playing off of what was just said earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I think what they both laid out pretty much shows why the Democratic Party fails to be as popular as they think they should, especially considering how much they control all the media, including entertainment media and every sphere of influence in pop culture. They got it under their lock and key, same with education, is because regular everyday Americans who may not be college educated but have common sense and want freedom see through a lot of the Democrat policies and realize that all these promises that they put out there about giving you this and giving you that all have strings attached. And those strings attached mean more government control, more government power, more government influence, and just a bigger government in general that will suppress our freedoms and dominate us. And people who, they may not have went to Harvard yet, but they got common sense to see what it is. And you've got these other leftists in this country who, in my opinion, have been indoctrinated by the education system, who claim that someone makes them smarter, but in reality, they're just indoctrinated. And they buy into this nonsense. And they're falling for the bait on the hook, and they're willing to surrender all their freedoms and liberties so they can supposedly be taken care of by the government. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just wondering, going forward, as a country, we've got to make a decision on which path are we going to take. Are we going to be for independence and freedom, or do we want to be subsidized and taken care of, be willing to be subjugated by the government? If you will, the analogy I would use is either living with your parents or living on your own. And it seems like the Democrats are people that like to live with their parents. Conservatives
No.
want to live on their own.
No.
That's the way I try to separate it.
Yeah, I want the independence.
No. The thing is that they want to participate in the same things everybody else wants to participate. And when I'm talking about they, I'm talking about those people who might have, be on subsistence or something like that. They want to participate in the same things anybody else wants to participate in. The thing is that they want to do it on an equal plane. They want equality and opportunity. And that's the main thing. You've got redlining. You've got so many other problems in employment and with lack of small business financing. We've got so many. When I say we, I'm an African American black man, and when I say we, I mean we in the pejorative sense, because I don't generally have those problems. You know, I've been born and raised up in the middle class, so I don't.
So basically, you just defeated your own point.
No, I would never defeat that.
You literally just said, I don't think you realize what you just said.
When Obama was president, and the fire department in New York, I believe, was told to lower their testing standards, so this way they would be able to hire more black males. So the testing standards had to be lowered in order for them to pass. I mean, come on, that's an opportunity right there to make pounding around the door departments.
But
Daniel, are you still with us?
Harvard and Columbia and Dartmouth, where now black students can get in with significantly lower SAT scores than any other group, and that even Asian students get penalized because too many of them money at Harvard.
I would not prefer. I would not.
Yes, give Daniel a chance to talk.
Go ahead, Daniel. I would never profess to like a situation like that. I agreed with Donald Trump 100% when he was against Common Core when it was first implemented. And I worked.
No, we're not talking about Common Core. We're talking about affirmative action.
I'm talking about the lack of education that has been given. Blacks have not been able to get an education until the last 50, 60 years. So that means they're 420 years behind the rest of the pilgrims.
They're not behind the rest of the pilgrims. Most people in America prior to the 1960s were not college educated either, regardless of whether they were white, black, whatever race they were.
I'm talking about first grade education. I'm talking about illegal.
Oh, get out of here with that. What are you talking about? Now you're just making up stuff.
It will. I know.
Most people in America prior to 1955 have a fifth grade education at best. The majority.
No, that's the white population, the white recorded population. I'm talking about black folks that are still down in Georgia in the sticks. I'm talking about.
Yeah, but right. Okay, what year are we in right now?
I'm talking about the segregation of public schools. Where
yeah, but we're in 2021. Were you alive? Were you alive?
That doesn't mean that we don't have parents who still don't know how to read. That doesn't, we
so what? My parents came to this country. They didn't know English. Didn't know anything about the language. Started from the bottom, working as janitors and cooks. Most people in America who came to this country started from the bottom, including most white people. Their families came in for review. They were usually coming from some type of serf class,
but they didn't
impoverished state, and they came here and started from the bottom and built whatever they
could. Under the auspices of death, if they read, if they learned how to read, black people were killed.
Bro, that's back in slavery. That's in the 1800s.
No, that was back in the 1950s. Man,
are you hearing yourself right now? You're telling me that black people were being killed because they could read in the 1950s?
Yes.
By the way, you guys, can you guys let Daniel talk too? I invited him on.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm just saying, everybody time. Don't get too far-fetched in your ideology, Don.
George Wallace stood outside and didn't let 4 little black girls into the school. Man, that's a
dude. You literally just said that black people were getting killed in America in the 50s because they could read. Okay, you literally disqualified yourself right there. That's it.
Okay, I'm disqualified. I'm the most wonderful disqualified person in the world. Go ahead.
If you say crazy stuff like that, then what do you want me to do? Take you serious?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Take me serious. But the bottom line is that I mean, if you can just negate the fact that the Ku Klux Klan can't do that. There's nothing against that. That's all right.
Dude, come on, man, stop.
That's you. I'm good. I'm good. I know what I'm
Are you sure about that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, have you ever read it?
I have no doubt.
He's 64 years old. He's from another generation. Now, Don, I'm muting your butt 40 for 2 minutes so Daniel Sunday House can talk. Talk to you soon. Okay, Daniel, how have you been following this conversation? What do you think?
Well, definitely all over the place and trying to, to catch up and see, what I'm going to say, because we went from freedom of speech to civil rights really quickly. But, I understand what Don's saying. Like you said, he's from a different generation. He experienced racism, head on. And he's not necessarily wrong when it comes to, the stuff that black folks face. Historically, it were at a disadvantage, but at the same time, even with Jim Crow laws and black codes and whatnot, black folks were coming up, right? During that time, they were, they had businesses, right? And I would say that now the issues that black folks are facing are not necessarily because of slavery or because of, racism. It's mainly because of what happened right after the civil rights, which is the Democrats, what they did is they introduced welfare, right, to not just blacks, but to anybody. And this is also during the feminist movement, right, where basically women were encouraged to just be on their own, and really not depend on men.
And they got trapped in poverty, you mean, because of the welfare system?
Exactly, right. So they almost encouraged women to marry the government. So men really were not, around the home. That's why about 75% of black, families, they don't get married, right? And 50% of Latino families don't get married. And that plays a huge role in that because, like I said, the government, a lot of the stuff y'all are talking about is true. The government does want, specifically the Democrats, do want us dependent on them so we can keep voting for them, right?
I worked with somebody who moved up here from Chicago, and she had 4 kids by the age of 25 because she was promised Section 8. She has Section 8. She does have a full-time job, though. But Duluth courted people from the... Don, you're back on the air. Duluth, Minnesota courted people into coming up here for federal housing because Chicago had a lack of public housing.
Exactly.
And that doesn't mean that the father wasn't present necessarily, because I worked in the Virginia public housing system, and just because they weren't married for monetary reasons doesn't mean the black fathers weren't around. Some of them were.
No, of course not. Of course not. Of course not. That doesn't mean that, it's 75% of African fathers or whatever, but the point, though, is that it's made minorities dependent on the government. That's really the issue, right? Like you said, some folks here were saying that we should be either, out of the house or live with the parents. And essentially, when you're dependent on the government, you're still going to be, asking for things, right? And the issue is that because we did have, racism in this country, right, that has played a role. And like somebody said here too, academics, they bring that up all the time, like, hey, because of white supremacy, you're not able to come up in the society, and that's not necessarily the case. There are obstacles because, our circumstances and whatnot, but at the end of the day, I think today in 2021, I think all of us have the same opportunities, at least like on paper. There's no law that says you can't do this because you're black. There's no law that says you can't do this because you're Mexican or whatever, right? I think all of us, we might have financial disadvantages, right? But I think at the end of the day, we have the same opportunities. I think we have that already. I think there's so many other factors that are affecting our communities that really no one is talking about. And I think I brought this up last time, but it's just really like at the end of the day, Democrats, Republicans, they are looking for what goal to give us, so we can keep voting for them at the end of the day. Like, I'm neither a Democrat nor a Republican because of that. Like, I've come to notice that, that like Trump, like I said, he used social media because he understood that it wasn't just, poor white folks who felt disenfranchised. It was a bunch of people who felt like they couldn't really speak their minds. The council posters that the left has created, we can't really speak our minds because if you say this, you're racist, you're homophobic, or you're anti this or whatever. So he got all those people to vote for him. And
yeah, but why do so many people in America feel vilified? Like, what is their beef? Most people have jobs.
You can't really speak your mind anymore. Honestly, like it's not even if you're whiter. Like if you say something that is quote unquote offensive, like 20 years ago. I mean, like if you watch the Chappelle show today, like if I were to put that today and somebody watching that, like you would flip on that. Like 20 years ago, I could watch that and I'm not going to be called homophobic. I mean, like it's ridiculous how we got to the point where we can't really say anything because people get offended. And I think people who voted for Trump went that way because they're like, man, I don't want to be part of this group because like I can't speak my mind. So it wasn't just racist people who were voting for Trump. It was a bunch of other folks who don't like this new culture we live in, and I understand that. I get it.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And remember, just as fast as the government will give you stuff, they can take it back just as fast, not fast.
That's true. If people are concerned about those that are disadvantaged, and I am too, but why are the solutions always about what the government should do for them? How about what the government should stop doing, such as stop making it so difficult for people that lack resources to be able to start businesses? Stop making it so difficult to build a house.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and if you're hungry enough, you'll find a way to hustle to work. I mean, I've been there.
That's a fact.
Starting from scratch, having to start from scratch, everything wiped out, and it wasn't easy. But if you're hungry, that's what you got to do. I was turned down for food stamps and everything else, so I didn't have a choice.
What's good for people is often counterintuitive because people think you're supposed to supposedly help people in the sense of, kind of carrying them instead of getting them to a point where they can carry their own weight. I know a story one time of a dad who had a son who refused to leave home and was essentially spoiled, and the mom wanted him to stay and take care of him, and the dad said, listen, if we're going to get this kid to be independent, take care of himself, we've got to force him to learn how to survive. So the dad literally took the kid out of his house, took him to the middle of the city, just robbed him off, gave him, I think, a couple $100 and said, you're on your own. Don't contact me. Don't contact mom. Find out a way to get by. We'll check in with you in 6 months to see how you're doing. And 6 months later, he had an apartment, had a job, and he thanked his dad. And he said, if he hadn't done this, I wouldn't have done what I needed to do, the personal responsibility I need to take to, take care of myself. And that's what we need to tell people. The problem in this country is, first of all, you can't tell black people anything anymore. And I say this as a black person. The reason black people in their state they're in and their lack of personal responsibility and just the situation they're in now, despite the fact that we're in 2021 and all the stuff you heard Don say, is because people are afraid to tell these people the truth. Mm-hmm. And so they live in this delusional victimhood, which is why despite all the resources you pour in, doesn't matter how much affirmative action you put in place, how much money you give them, they'll always be in that situation because their mindset's totally warped. They're not thinking like how the real world is. How everyone out here eating a crab sandwich and people are busting their butts to get by and take care of their families. They're still stuck in this entitlement mentality, which is why compare African Americans to immigrants who come to this country, whether they be from Africa, South America, Europe, Asia. When they come here, look at the mindset. They have a survival mindset. I got to work and make something happen. 400 years. These African Americans, 400 years, have just rejected the concept of personal responsibility. They blame everybody they can find for their problems.
I don't think it's so much
that. What it is, man. I'm not afraid to say it. It's just someone has to tell them the truth, man. That's why this Don guy, I don't know what. Look at what you're thinking has done to your brain. Look how delusional you are. You're so out of touch with reality. You literally just said on this line that in America, black people were getting killed in the 1950s for being able to read.
for you to even say something like that tells me you're completely lost touch with reality.
Am I on mute?
You should be on mute.
Oh,
no, like
okay.
No,
No,
you don't want to do that.
No, I'm good. You know, we didn't have Emmett Till for nothing. You know, we didn't have the lynchings that were going on that as a normal progression. You know, that's how the society was working. And in fact, the 50s was the beginning at the end of a lot of things because we were so prosperous. And when I say we, I'm talking about America in general. And so things started loosening up. And race for a little while was on the back burner after Emmett Till and Rosa Parks. But then all of a sudden, you know, we had a catharsis between Eisenhower losing the election in the Bay of Pigs, and everything started going, you know, and then Vietnam, and everything started going out of whack again. And that's when, again, like this, where the civil rights issue of different water fountains and you know, not being able to sit at the food counter.
But John, most millennials or the millennials were not born. They weren't even born then. They you know, the millennials
But that's
were born way later. But if you keep telling them these things about this is what happened to us, this is what's going to still happen to you, then they become worse. Because now they've got it in their heads because they were raised to believe, and that these things will still occur to them that already had happened.
That's why I'm proud of James for saying that in my introduction, that I still believe that these things are going on today, because they are. And that's our big problem, is nobody sees the facts. Nobody sees the facts.
okay, name one thing going on now.
I'm talking about higher incarceration rate.
No, you want to tell me
So black people committing crimes at a disproportionately higher rate than any other group in this country. The fact that you got 13% of the population, let's just cut that in half because we're strictly talking about black males here. So we're talking around 5 to 7% of the population committing more than 40% of the murder, more than 40% of the theft, more than 40% of the drug dealing, more than 40% of aggravated assault.
That's what I'm saying.
And you're talking about a disproportional prison rate? Are you kidding me?
That's what I'm saying.
You ought to be ashamed of yourself.
Nope, I'm not ashamed of the word I ever said. But the bottom line is...
Because you're not logical and coherent. You can't even connect the fact that black people commit crimes at a higher rate than any other group of people in America. That's why there's a high prison population of African Americans. You do get that, right?
Well, you know what, Joe? A lot of white people commit crimes and they aren't caught.
But no,
we're talking about a percentage compared to the... So, for example, if you got 6% of the population committing nearly half of all the violent crime in the country, there's a reason why they're overrepresented in jail.
Right, but you're talking about 11%. I don't know what your figures are. But the bottom line is that 11 to 13% of the American population committing 40...
No, I didn't say 11 to 13. I cut that in half. Because if you say 13%, that's including the black female population. I'm talking about just the black male population, which is around 6 to 7% of the U.S. population committing nearly half of all violent crime in this country.
Right. And
that is why you have a high prison population. But you don't want to accept that because you reject the idea of personal responsibility. So for you, the idea of holding someone accountable for their actions somehow makes them a victim in your world.
I never object to personal responsibility.
Okay, so then what's the problem with putting a drug dealer or a gangbanger or a murderer or a thief in prison? What's wrong with that?
I don't even know what you just said. What was that? Repeat that.
I said if you believe in personal responsibility, what's wrong with putting a gangbanger, a drug dealer, a murderer, or a thief in prison? What's wrong with that?
Nothing.
Okay, then why bring up the issue of prison population?
Because I'm talking about the reason they're going to prison. The reason that they're going to prison is lack of the inequitable lack of education. the
Oh
red
my
line.
God! You tell me because
the
someone's
red
not
line
educated,
does
that
not-
means that's okay for them to go and start murdering people and stealing from people?
If they don't know any better, yes. If they've learned from
Are you kidding me?
white, if they've learned from
Just
the
because you're
white
poor doesn't
slave
mean you have to
master,
lack moral character. I don't know where you get this idea from.
the more
Black people in the past,
Black
people in America, if you look at the 18 and 1900s, when they were in a worse state of poverty, under worse racial oppression than there is now, did not commit crimes anywhere near the level they are today. So I don't know where you get this idea. Just because you're uneducated, poor, or being oppressed now means equals you're going to become a violent criminal. That's ridiculous, man.
I don't even know.
You don't even know your own people's history for you to make that statement.
What are you talking about? My people are
standard. I just told you, if you go back to the 18 and 1900s, when black people in America were in a much higher rate of poverty, were living under a much more oppressive time, racially speaking, and they were not committing anywhere near the crimes they're committing now. It wasn't even close. Not to mention the single motherhood rate was south of 10%.
Exactly.
Now it's north of 75%.
That's the problem.
You have to take slavery. People who formerly did not make an income at all, you have to, and try to incorporate them into society. You have to help with some kind of income ratio.
That's literally what I just said to you. I'm talking about from the period of time when after 1865, after slavery ended,
Right.
all the way up until the mid 1960s. That's nearly, we're talking about a 100-year period here. During that time period, black people were living in more poverty than they are today. They were under more racial oppression than they are now. Yet they were not committing the same level of violent crimes as they are today. That's the point I'm trying to get to you. That's why I'm trying to show you your point about poverty and oppression and lack of education does not equal you becoming a violent criminal, robbing, murdering, raping, and pillaging your own community.
Jesus Christ. You got to be kidding
But
me.
you know what? People are taught that based on desperation. I worked in the ghetto. I've seen it myself.
Right after slavery, right after slavery, the slaves got their 40 acres and mule. They got their right, somewhat right to vote, to start voting. They were taking over the Senate and the House chambers. And then all of a sudden, they were, told that they couldn't take those seats. And so, and then in the 20s, the early hundreds, they were establishing their own organizations. That's what the Black Wall Street was more successful than Wall Street in New York, and they burnt it down. There is an inordinate amount of violence that happens to churches.
Oh my God! And you don't even know what I'm saying, but you're not even addressing my point, man.
No, I don't even know what you're.
You're so lost. You don't even know what you're talking about. The point we're trying to make is, you originally brought up. Bring up a fact today. I told you bring up a fact today that points to some type of racial oppression blacks dealing with now. You brought up the black prison population. I then told you that's because they commit a higher percentage of crimes than anyone else in the country. You then said the reason they're committing the crimes is because of lack of education and poverty. I then showed you, statistically we can see, from the end of slavery up until the mid-1960s, black people were living in more poverty. They were more impoverished than they are now. There was more racial oppression then than there is now, yet they were not committing even close to the level of crime they commit today. But because you're not a logical thinking person, you couldn't even address that point. You went on some tangent about, the Reconstruction era and Black Wall Street and then the 1920s. You don't even know what I'm talking about.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
This whole racial thinking has broken your mind to where you can't even think clearly. You don't even understand what you're saying anymore. As a black person in 2020, living in America, 2021, you have more rights, privileges, and economic opportunities than more than 90% of the people on this planet today. Just by being an American citizen. But in your woke mind, because you've been indoctrinated and becoming a victim, you can't see that, appreciate that, or take advantage of it. Yet you want to sit here and play victim and try to claim the oppression of people before you.
Man,
You're bringing up Emmett Till and what happened to people in the 1800s and the early 1900s and trying to claim it like it happened to you.
And then I have a son who's
You guys, I have to go to FedEx in 2 hours. So,
I've got a son.
who's that in charge, John?
What
I've
John
got a
does,
son who's the CFO of a software company. I've got a daughter
yes, you
who's
do that for
the
yourself,
assistant
but you make
the
excuses,
attorney
John.
general of the state. I've got
John.
another daughter who's the head.
Once again, you're proving my point.
Yes, but
That just literally proves the fact that because you're black in America, it doesn't mean you have to be a criminal or have to be a bum or have to be some person who can't handle their business. Your children prove my point. They're capable and they can accomplish just like any other person can.
But I agree with
Do you
your
have any
point.
idea how many
I
white
agree
people in
with
America
I
are
agree
dirt
with
poor?
I agree with some of your points. You don't even understand. You're just going off. But the
I'm
bottom
going
line
off
is
what
that
you're saying to me. That's when I'm reacting to the illogical, incoherent statements you've been making this entire show.
no, because man, there's no
You can't even say
non-black.
illogical. Good God. No, look, dude, come on, man. Look, just do yourself a favor. Just move on, man. There's no point. Okay.
Man, you have no idea who he's talking to. He has none.
I think I do,
But
and I think everybody on the show does by this point.
All right, let me bring up a question because you guys
Fine.
brought up the good. You talked about the prison statistics, and I hear this a lot from people that call themselves progressive. I don't like that term, but you hear that like of course blacks are being discriminated against because the higher prison population, but you can also find I think that maybe a bigger disparity between men and women. So they don't, if you're going to say, okay, this must mean that blacks are disadvantaged because they're in prison more, well, then aren't men disadvantaged? They're in prison more than women.
No, this is more aggressive. Men are naturally more aggressive than women. I mean, that's what it is. If you look at all the people who are, you get the most 100 aggressive people in the world, you find that probably like 90% of them are men.
Well,
Nevertheless,
I mean,
get
the
lighter
point you made is a great point. Let's
But it shows that
address
people,
Don. Let's see if Don has any logical, critical thinking skills. You heard what he just said to you, right? He said your point about the black prison population being too high means, whatever, they're a victim of the system and all that nonsense. So let's just put it to you like you said. More than 90% of the prison population is male. Why is that?
Right. Oh, that's threat. The threat to the powers that be need to be quelled. They need to be quieted. And one of the best ways to quiet a threat is imprisonment. You can see that everywhere in the world, So and we're number one. We've got more prisoners in prison, and it's because of the threat. The whole defund police, and I believe naming it defund police, but the whole refund police object was to change the way, and I don't use police either. I use law enforcement. The main thing, I'm a cop kid. He doesn't know, but I'm a cop kid. And my mom, it's amazing what you learn growing up. And the thing is that retribution is a big part of control. And that's what incarceration is all about.
It's not a matter. Let me get you a simple question. Why is there way more men in prison than there are women? Why?
It's threat. Men are much more a threat to another man than a woman.
See, if you were a logical thinking person, the obvious answer is because men commit more crimes than women do. Thus, that would have tied into the point about why there's more black people in prison, because they commit more crimes than everyone else does.
And you're punished.
You can't get to that point because I don't know if the receptors in your brain are not connected properly. It's like maybe you're dyslexic. I don't know what's going on here, but
I'm just way much deeper.
You got to figure it out, man.
I'm just way much deeper than you are. That's all.
Really?
The thing is that because when you talk about because they commit more crime, there's a reason for that, and that is the threat. That is the
I'm not asking you for the
obligation to avert a threat. And when you're committing a crime, you're doing that on generally the auspices of a threat. It's deeper than just because they commit more crime. You have to think
Okay,
out of the
should a
box.
criminal go to jail? Yes or no?
Yes. I mean, it
Okay.
depends on the
So
crime,
if
but
someone
yes.
commits a crime and they get caught by the police, should the police take them to prison?
It depends on as you know the legal system, you know that there are many classes of crime. So if you've got a misdemeanor, then you're not going to jail in general. You might go there for a day or two.
Of course, we all understand
post bail.
But I know where you're going with this. You're going to bring up the whole non-violent drug offender, and you're going to bring up all these black men supposedly in prison for possession of marijuana.
No.
You're going to go. I know because liberals do this all the time. Now, anyone who knows what goes on, you know the only reason they have those charges is because they get plea deals and they get pleaded down to that. Usually, those are people that get caught with large quantities of drugs
legal.
with intent to distribute, and then they get plea deals down to civil possession. That's the only reason they're in there on that charge.
Drugs used to be legal. Cocaine was legal. Marijuana was legal. Those were legal drugs. And people changed that description. And now we changed it back. And so there has to be something that has to be retroactive. And it's not necessarily, complete closure of the prison. Prisons make money too. Here in Nevada, prison system is the fourth largest corporation in the state. So we need our prison. But on the other
I
hand,
believe it was Seattle that recently decriminalized drug use, and now that city is so decrepit, and so there's so many addicted users of drugs. They're allowed to do them anywhere. They legalized it, and so you have that city in Seattle. Just it's so degraded, and so many addictions, and businesses have pulled out, and police officers have quit. And I mean, they have a skeleton crew, if you want to call it that, police force, but there's nothing to enforce because they legalized drugs. And so if you're not a family environment, a family-friendly environment, so you have people moving out. So now, I mean, they're just walking around in a daze, zombied out, because they legalized it all. And this is recent.
right, and the thing is that that's what happens with Sodom and Gomorrah. If you don't, want to believe in some of the tenets of the Bible, that it goes that way. You don't have a Democrat or Republican running it. You just got chaos. And that's what governments are for. So, a lot of this conjecture on why we don't need government, there you go right there. We do need a government in a place like Seattle. Seattle used to be one of my favorite cities. And now
I'm sorry. It was actually Oregon and Washington's moving to decriminalize drugs. My bad.
Right.
Sorry, it was Oregon.
Right. No, Portland. Well, I used to love Seattle, and now I don't love it so much. But that was one of the things. But that's one of the things I was talking about: economic disparity. I was going to buy a property in Seattle. I'm glad this came up because redlining came up. I was going to buy a property in Seattle instead of it was going to be possibly a second property as like a vacation house. And when they originally recalled that information, my wife and I, this is prescient because I can't believe it worked out in this successfully. But we were looking for a house and we found one. But the realtor hadn't seen us, and we inquired a second time, and they were just fine with it. And we made an appointment, and the third time we went in, they were flustered as all get out. And they would that. They wouldn't take our information. It was because we were black, and it wasn't because of any personality. Because we work with everyone. As I said, I'm a lobbyist and a civil rights activist, and I deal with everybody, and I get along with most everybody, no exception. And for them to, when they see us, make us go through a whole lot more hills, climb those hills that we didn't normally do when we bought our other property. And this was, it was we thought about taking them to court because they had said that we were too qualified and they had already taken all our information. So this is a blatant overstep of red line, instance of red line. And it happens to a lot of blacks. They try to move out into the suburbs, and they're not able to. So, I don't see what...
I'm going to call BS on that one.
Okay, that's fine. No, I'm talking about my own personal experience in it. And redlining, not being able to get a property in another part of town that is necessarily ascribed to yours.
Did you try different ways?
You might buy something somewhere else. I mean, will you still be able to buy a house?
Oh, yeah. No. We just decided, well, not there. We bought another house. But,
okay, so then there it is, man. That's my point. You're talking about first world problems, man. That's my point.
I want
your perspective and the perspective of so many black people in this country is, you compare yourself to, say, the top wealthy people in this country who are like less than 0.0001% on the issue of mankind, of the standard of living. Instead, why don't you compare yourself to these 7 billion people on this planet and ask yourself, do you really have it that bad? And if you're honest with yourself, you're going to realize, no, you don't. Exactly. And if you want to make it more personal, just compare how you live to how black people before you lived, like how your grandparents lived. And ask yourself, do you really have anything to complain about?
Oh, no, I've been there. That's why I'm blessed. I'm totally blessed. And
that's my point. So but yet you've got a generation of African Americans today who act as if they are living in the most oppressive land ever. I mean, they talk like they're living in Afghanistan. They're not U.S. citizens in 2021.
Have you
and
been
the reason they got to that point is because black people like you, the older generation, have hammered into their heads that they're victims, they can't make it no matter what, and the whole system is rigged against them. Well, full well that's not true.
Facts are facts. Have you ever been to...
That's not a fact. You literally just said that your own children have successful careers. Did you not?
Very much so, yeah.
So how did they achieve that? Was it an accident?
It was their parents. Me.
Or that plus what else? What did your kids have to do to achieve that? Think about it.
I gave them wisdom, knowledge, and the desire to succeed.
But what did your kids ultimately have to do to still achieve it, despite all the knowledge you gave them?
My unconditional love.
You're not hearing me. I'm talking about what your kids did, not what you did. I'm saying, what did your kids do to achieve the success they had?
I made sure they go to college and give them the most opportunity.
Okay, you're not hearing me. The point I'm trying to get to is that your kids have to work hard. Mm-hmm. They obviously had discipline and a work ethic to be able to achieve success, which is required of anybody to be successful. So when you got a group of young people,
they have to have a faith.
No, well, that's the point I'm trying to get to. The last thing that young black people need to hear today is the system's rigged against you no matter what. You can't make it. You're a victim. What's the last thing you need to hear?
You always strive to do the things other people say you can't do. That's what I taught them. I taught them to never let, and in fact, be outright and proud of their heritage. I expect that from anybody. So, I've instilled with them, my wife and I have instilled with them that they were going to be the best people that they could be, no matter what. And believe me, I integrated by junior high school. I know it. I know adversity, but I don't give a shit about any of it, ever. And for people to denounce the truth, I would never denounce the truth because it happened.
What truth?
The truth is that there are
that you're a moron. What that truth? Or what truth are you trying to get to here?
Wow. Well, that was one of the nicest things anybody said about me.
Well, I
I
have
tell
to
you.
say, I mean, my God. You're the one that brought up the Bible, right? What does the Bible say? The Bible says, "Address a fool according to his folly, yet lest he be wise in his own eyes." That's what I'm trying to do here. I gave you the respect. I taught you like I thought you knew what you were talking about. The last 20 minutes, you're giving me a bunch of nonsense, man. I mean,
I
what
have
else
no
would I say?
idea. That's fine. That's fine. There's a plant, but we've had some before. The thing is that whether you agree with me or not, that's one thing.
Oh my God!
You know,
Being moronic. Does the FBI planted someone just to disagree with you?
Oh yeah, because I'm the type of person who the FBI has kept an eye on me for decades now. I
really don't see why they have to.
No, they don't, because I'm the most upright person in the world. I'll tell it like it is.
Really?
Absolutely, all the time, and that's why I could be a lobbyist. I don't go out. I don't have the time in life.
Who hired you to be a lobbyist, by the way? Who did that?
This is me. I did this on my own time. I've been doing it for over.
Who do you lobby for? You said you're a lobbyist, right? Who do you lobby for?
I lobby for whatever I want to. That's the whole point.
Oh, so you're just like a lobbyist in your own mind?
I have credentials. I do the thing. I've been doing it. I bought the
issues that you lobby for.
Well, I bought the ERA that got passed here in Nevada. I worked for 3 sessions on that. I've made bills, education bills and laws. I've had one for multicultural curriculum. I've amended many laws, civil rights laws.
Curriculum. That's another thing we need. Great.
Oh yeah. Okay. No, we do that for people like you. But we need but there are other laws and amendments, a lot, that I've done in the last 11 years that I've been doing lobbying. So, and it's nothing, because, you get to know everybody. And I deal with, Biden's, I've met him several times, talked to him. Kamala Harris.
You live in a country that allows you to do that. I mean, there may be people that don't agree with the issues that you lobby for, but you're able to do that because this is America.
But that's your responsibility. Just like the gentleman was saying, David, just like he was saying, that's your responsibility. Civic responsibility is to lobby for your interests, your family's interests, and then the community. That's what you're supposed to be doing. And so all these people
not the point she was
talk. Go ahead. These people are just talk, and they have no idea what they're talking about. So, and that's okay.
We'll talk about the pot calling the kettle black here, but anyway, the point we're trying to get to here is that I think what she's trying to leverage, that the fact that you're able to do what you're doing when you claim to be in some oppressed land where you somehow are stuck and can't do anything, yet you're able to do what you're able to do. Isn't that a sign that you live in a good country?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I don't know. I mean, there's no better country in the world. What are they doing?
Then what the hell are you complaining about? Oh my God, man! That's what we were trying to get you to understand the whole time.
I complain that other people can't understand how grateful they should be. Just like you've been saying, we should be very grateful where we live, and that's why it should be about equality. It should be about everybody having the opportunity to do whatever it is they want to do, and
we have that right now.
Progress. I think
we already have that.
No, we don't. Or else we
yes,
wouldn't
do.
Anybody can.
Why do you think people risk their lives to get to America?
We wouldn't have the listening that we were just talking about this last half hour. We wouldn't have that talk if we agreed that everything was hunky-dory and kumbaya.
No one's saying everything's hunky-dory. I'm talking about we all have equality in this country. We all have opportunity in this country. And I'll just ask you right off the top. Name one other country on this planet, either now or has ever existed in human history, that is better than America.
None.
Name one.
I said none.
Case closed. Then that's it. That's it. I don't even know why you're even debating anymore. You just acknowledge it again.
No, that I'm saying that the way that it's run, I like Trump and a lot of things that he did.